Hi there, my name is Deepak Kumar. In this video we will be looking at some more syntax errors. Just a reminder that the version of the project used in this video is available in the description below. We'll be looking at two main things in this video. Firstly, we'll be looking at some naming conventions and how they apply to different types such as classes, constants, variable names, and so on. The second thing we'll be looking at is if statement syntax and some common pitfalls that are associated with it. I'll be rounding out the video with some helpful tips that hopefully you find useful. Alright, so let's take a look at some naming conventions. If we go to the controller class over here by double clicking it, there's a few things that we can notice right off the bat. The first thing is the class names. Class names are generally singular nouns and start with an uppercase. So if we look at all the class names in this project, controller, module, person, staff, student, and tester, they're all singular nouns and they start with an uppercase letter. This is the general rule of thumb while writing a class name. Moving on to variable names, the major difference between class names and variable names are that variable names start with a lowercase. Now sometimes you might have two or more words that are vital to the description of the variable. If we look at this variable over here, student map, has two separate words, but it's very important to use them together to signify what this variable does. In this case, we use a convention called camel case. Now, camel case states that the variable name starts with a lowercase, but every subsequent word starts with an uppercase, like so. Student starts with a lowercase, and the first letter of map starts with an uppercase. This is the general rule of thumb while naming variables. Another thing that's important to look at is relevance of variable names. If we look at the variables here, it's easy at any point in the program to understand what these variables do or of what type they are. If we look at this, it says student1. At any point in the program, I will know that it is of type student, and it is the first variable of this type. Now, a lot of Novice programmers will make the mistake of saying student A, or maybe even staff B. So later in the program, or even if I revisit it a few weeks later, and I look in the middle of the program trying to solve some bugs, I won't know of what type A and B are. So it makes it really hard for programmers to solve bugs and to generally re-understand the program that they had first written. So it's always nice to avoid naming them ambiguously and make sure that the variable names are very relevant to what they are trying to achieve. The next thing we're going to look at is method names. Method names and variable names share a lot of similarities. Namely, they both start with a lowercase, and they both follow the camel case convention. The difference lies in the fact that method names usually have action words in them. They try to illustrate what the body of the method is going to do. If we look at some specific examples in the controller class, we can see that method names such as setup, add student, add staff, add module, and any of the other methods in the rest of the class or even the rest of the program all follow this convention. It's very helpful both in terms of understanding what this method does and to make your program readable and easy to understand even if it's somebody else reading the program. The final naming convention we need to look at is constants. If we open up the tester class over here, we can look at the first field here and see that it is a constant. That means the value of this variable doesn't change throughout the context of the program. The naming convention for constants states that all the letters of the variable have to be uppercase. Now you might be wondering, if they're all uppercase, how can I use camel case to separate the words? The short answer is you don't. You instead use underscores to separate the words within the variable name to make it meaningful. So let's look at some basic if statement syntax. If we open up the tester class over here, you can see that I've written out a small set of if statements here for you guys to look at. If we look at the first one, we can see that it says if current students is greater than the number of students, which is defined up here as number of students equals 2. Then it'll print out no new students. The second one is looking at if the current students is lesser than the number of students, 2, then print out students have left. The last one is looking at if current students are less than or equal to the number of students, 2, students may have left. Let us see what this means and how to write a good if statement. Firstly, an if statement contains the keyword if followed by a condition. Now this condition returns a Boolean variable, that is true or false. So if you look at this condition, it says current students greater than the number of students. This expression will evaluate to either true or false, depending on which the inside of the if statement will either be executed or ignored. Let's look at some of the common mistakes that people make while using if statements. The most common mistake that people tend to make is putting a semicolon at the end of their if statement. Unfortunately, this is not right. Try not to do this. Let's take a look at some of the different symbols that we can use in the expressions in an if statement. So you've got greater than or equal to, lesser than or equal to, and equal to, which is actually two equal symbols, not to be confused with the single equals, which is an assignment operator. Don't use this in an if statement. You might get some errors that are hard to diagnose. Remember, double equal to. Finally, there's the not equal to, which is an exclamation mark and an equal sign. So let's round out the video with some helpful tips. Today's tip is for mismatched brackets. What is this? Mismatched brackets are generally a common error amongst Novice programmers. This means that you're either opening too many brackets and not closing them, or closing brackets that haven't even been opened in the first place. Let's go into the tester class so I can show you how the compiler handles this. If we go to the bottom here and get rid of that bracket and try to run this program, the error that we get is Java reached end of file while parsing, which doesn't really indicate to a Novice programmer what the problem is. Now we know that it generally means you probably missed a bracket somewhere. This is a great reason to also indent or tab space your code so that you know where the brackets generally need to be or how they need to be aligned. So I can go through, see that I'm missing a bracket here, pop that right back in. Now you might have older programs that are maybe not so well formatted. Well, IntelliJ provides a clever solution to that too. If I go over here and badly indent that, just so I can illustrate how we could fix it. Let's go over here, right click on the tester class and say reformat code. Press OK, pops right back out. Works amazingly. Just an example of some of the amazing features that IDEs provide.